In today's show, we're talking Atlanta Hawks, a season preview. Michael Bolton.
Thanks, Josh. It's Michael Bolton here, and it's time for another episode of the Locked On Fantasy Basketball Podcast. Let's get to it.
Let's get to it, indeed.
You are Locked On Fantasy Basketball, your daily fantasy basketball podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network.
Hello and welcome to the Locked On Fantasy Basketball Podcast, brought to you by Basketball Monster. My name is Josh Lloyd and I am the lead fantasy analyst at basketballmonster.com. And you can find me on Twitter, as always, at redrock_bball, as my voice goes, on TikTok at redrock_bball, and on Instagram at Locked On Fantasy Basketball. Oh man, what's going on with my voice? Thank you for making Locked On Fantasy Basketball your first listen every day. We are free. We are available on all platforms. A reminder, the FBI X LOFB Fantasy Basketball International Locked On Fantasy Basketball World Cup is starting up. It is a 48 division, 12 team leagues, 48 times 12, that's how many teams are in it, to determine the best standard 9-cap player in the world. We are going to be filling 24 of those leagues through this show. I am taking sign-up requests this week. You will find the link in the description on YouTube, in the show notes on the podcast. There is a quiz for this week's entry. You don't have to get every question right to get in, but it's going to be used as some sort of determinator in terms of, the higher scores that get it, that people answer. We'll take those ones out of the list of people, and then we'll do another one next week for the next batch. This is a league that is a 9-cat league, as I said. There's certain phases in it. You get through the first phase. You actually redraft your team. So if you've gotten through and there's guys injured, you want to change things up, you do it. And then you do that again for the final round to see if you are the best fantasy basketball player in the world. It's been running through FBI for a few years. We are sort of co-promoting it this season at Locked On Fantasy Basketball. It is a standard 9-category league with not millions, but a lot of teams in it. Almost 1,000 teams in it. The Fantasy Basketball International Locked On Fantasy Basketball World Cup. If you want to get in, you want to place in that league, the details or the sign-up form is in the show notes and in the description. It's a $20 entry fee into that World Cup. So hit that link and get into it. Now, we are going to talk Atlanta Hawks. I'm going to do that with Brad Rowland of Locked On Hawks. So we'll get him in. Brad Rowland, welcome back to the show.
Here I am, living the dream. How are you, Josh?
I am good. It's good to have you here. It's good to talk about this Atlanta Hawks team, which is, as always, there's always interesting things going on with this team. Of course, they fired their coach around the All-Star break last season, brought in Quin Snyder. So there's a lot of things that are still up in the air with this squad. There's always weird little discussions and things that are happening. And I just think that there's some stuff that maybe gets miscovered or undercovered or incorrectly reported on this team. And that's what we're going to try to get to the bottom of here with you today. And I want to start, as we do on all of these shows, by looking at the changes to the roster. Kobe Buffkin is drafted at pick 15, struggled in Summer League. Who cares? I think he'd be good. Wes Matthews comes in. Patty Mills comes in, just trying to get the average age of the roster up, I guess. Mohamed Gay, Seth Lundy, and Miles Norris as other guys that were either drafted or signed as undrafted rookies. So Lundy and Norris on two ways, Gay on the main roster. Matthews and Mills on his fourth team this offseason. I'll just quickly talk about these guys. Are they going to stay on the roster? Because the Hawks currently, they do need to make a cut. They've got 16 full contracts on the roster at the moment. Matthews, they just signed, so I assume they're keeping him. But what's the likelihood here of Mills staying on the team?
Yeah, like you said, they proactively signed Matthews, I think, just for some wing depth that they kind of need in a veteran, like you mentioned. Mills is one I've had a tough time with all summer, not to go super deep into it, but they kind of need a veteran guard who could play in the event of an injury to Trae or Dejounte. But I also heard as soon as they made the trade, they may not keep him. So I think they probably need to right now without any other options. But I think either him or Vit Krejci are the natural cuts if they have to make one.
Yeah, I've got Vit Krejci as the guy that I think they're going to cut just because of that reason, just having a veteran point guard like Mills, who's a legendary teammate and still a really knockdown shooter. I think they might keep him for that purpose, but then I sort of wavered a bit when they signed Wes Matthews, who's also a legendary shooter, great teammate, and a guy that maybe can still play a little bit, so we'll see exactly what direction they go there. when on the surface, when looking at this, the ins versus outs, it is a talent downgrade. Like, because John Collins is clearly the best player out of everybody on that list. They also lose Aaron Holiday, Trent Forrest, Tyrese Martin, Donovan Williams. The last four, doesn't matter. They weren't particularly good. But John Collins is the best player of that group. They gave him away for nothing. They got Rudy Gay back. He was traded again, and he in the Patty Mills deal, he was waived by the Thunder. That was a salary dump. Obviously, getting Bufkin helps longer term, but that is purely, Brad, a cost-saving move, because that's all that's happened with this deal.
Yeah, I totally agree. I mean, I'm sure we'll get into it, but they're banking on the new coach and some increased depth that they got at last deadline with Saddiq Bey to kind of paper over the fact that they got worse. Like, the roster is definitely worse right now than it was in terms of like just the core guys. Trading Collins for nothing. As much as Collins is controversial in some aspects, he's a good basketball player. He had a very bad shooting season last year, but taking him off your roster does not make you better. And that was definitely the biggest thing they did in the offseason in terms of like present day, and that in itself, like you said, for cost reasons, both short term and long term, not ideal.
Yeah, that's clearly what it is. But yeah, I'm guessing they're hoping an internal improvement, the full off season with the new coach can offset some of that, but there is no getting around it. That does make them worse. Now, in terms of heading into the season, they're in a pretty good position with regard to injuries. No one, I believe, unless correct me if I'm wrong, Brad, but no one enters this season injured. Last season, Bogdanovic was coming off knee surgery, but at this point, touch wood, everyone is healthy and ready to go.
Yeah, it feels like the first time in a long time that's been the case. Bogdanovic has had knee stuff the last couple of summers. Last year, Jalen Johnson had an off-season cleanup, nothing serious, but was banged up. Okongwu the year before that. So yeah, they're clean right now, which is honestly a new feeling for me. I don't have anything to like dig into in July and August, start looking like at practice videos for injury updates. So it's all clean right now.
Yeah, we're all clean now, which is great. Let's hope it stays that way. All right, let's get into a projected starting five, which you've sent through to me. I do think this will be the case. It isn't what I would do, but I'm not the coach. Trae Young, Dejounte Murray, DeAndre Hunter, Saddiq Bey, and Clint Capela. Now, there are going to be two things here that I think people look at. Number one, there are plenty of people, especially in the fantasy community, and I'm sure this is the case amongst Hawks fandom, Brad, that we're going, surely it's time for Onyeka Okongwu to start over Clint Capela. And we literally have this discussion every year for the last 3 years, or at least the last 2 years, and we discuss it and we say, no, it's still going to be Clint that's starting. But is this the season where they do move on from Clint? He is important to this team, but people are getting impatient with the 6th overall pick who's stuck playing 20 minutes a night for 3 years.
It's such an odd situation. And part of that is that, to his credit, Capela is still a really valuable and good player. And that's if you want to say it's a problem, I guess that you could view it that way, but he's almost too good not to start. And that's, if he's on the team, that's kind of my default, is like, you don't keep Capela. If you're gonna have Okongwu start, you would trade Capela. You would not bring him off the bench. That's kind of where I think. So until the day that they trade Clint Capela, I'm going to assume he's going to be a starting center. There's still buzz now. I mean, every time the Siakam stuff comes up, Capela's out there. Dallas has been linked to him all summer long, and it wouldn't stun me still in the next 2 months if they were to trade Clint. But until they do that, I think he's going to be the incumbent. I do think that they might play Okongwu more. Even with Capela on the roster, it might be more of an even split versus that, 27-21, 26-22 kind of split they've been doing the last couple of years. It might be 24-24 this year, but for the most part, I'm pretty confident that Capela's around. Trae Young loves him. He's still a valuable player, and I think he'll be a starter.
That was the next question I was going to ask you, because people think, well, they'll just play 24-24. But, Brad, last season, once Quin Snyder took over, you know what happened to Onyeka Okongwu's minutes? They went down. He played fewer minutes. He was playing like 19, 20 a night instead of 22, 23 under Onyeka Okongwu. And a lot of people don't, because people will look at Okongwu's fantasy ranking after the change in coach, and it went way up. He was like a top 60 player even coming off the bench. It just went through the roof. But people assume it's because, Snyder made a decision and he started splitting the minutes. And no, he went the opposite way. He just played Okongwu fewer minutes, but Okongwu's block rate went through the roof. He's never missed I think he missed one free throw over his final 10 games or something. Everything went through the roof in terms of his per minute production, but he did not play anywhere near as much. So that's an interesting thing, that you think that it might head more towards the 24-24. I do tend to think that, but the evidence we've seen suggests that actually the opposite is what Snyder believed. But yeah, we'll see where that goes this season.
Yeah, it's more of almost like a practical thing, because you mentioned before the fact that Okongwu was the number 6 overall pick. If you're his agent, you can't be happy with him going into year 4 as a proven guy. I mean, he's proven to be really good already. I mean, fantasy wise, real life wise, like he's a really good player already, like a starting caliber center. And I think that if you're him, like you can't help but want to play more. And I think if you're the Hawks, you have to at least keep that in mind. Like if you want to keep this guy long term, playing him more is like the least you can do. It's like one of those very interesting personality things that Snyder going to have to manage if they bring everybody back. And it looks like as of mid-August, they're probably going to do that.
The other one there that I think is interesting is Saddiq Bey, who I do believe is going to jump in and start in place of John Collins, but it's not what I would do. I'm not a big Saddiq Bey fan. I don't think there's much upside in him. I would do one of two things. I would either start Jalen Johnson, who I think came on pretty well last season, or I would start AJ Griffin and play DeAndre Hunter at the 4. I don't think there's any chance of those two things happening, but is there that groundswell of momentum behind either of those things with Hawks fans?
I think that, again, acknowledging it's still early. I think it's more likely that it would be Johnson than it would be Griffin. I think that Hunter is going to start. He's not the most loved Hawk right now in general, and he's been on trade rumors, but I think that if he's on the team, he's going to start. Contract-wise, pedigree-wise, he's going to start. I agree with you. Like, you could put him at the 4. I do think that in general, what they tended to do last year was to keep Saddiq Bey and Clint Capela more together and keep Johnson and Okongwu more together off the bench. So if you have Okongwu off the bench, those pairings kind of make sense. Bey's defensive limitations, but also he provides your shooting that you need with Capela on the court. Johnson and Okongwu have paired well together. So that's why I put Bey as the incumbent starter. I'm not uber confident in that. I think that's my lean right now. But Johnson might just sort of will himself on the court more often. Like he's the kind of guy that has that kind of ceiling, that multifaceted approach, and Snyder by all accounts likes him as well. I just think that practically speaking, if you assume Hunter and Capela both start, Bey just for the shooting, kind of the spacing and the natural progression of kind of keeping those guys together.
Yeah, we know that Snyder's history in Utah was playing Bojan Bogdanovic at the 4, like to have a shooter out there, or Royce O'Neal, who's took 80% of his shots from 3 or something along those lines, where that's not really Jalen Johnson's game, but if you're Saddiq Bey, that's really all he can do at this point is shoot threes, and you don't want him doing anything else. You don't want him trying to take guys off the dribble, because we saw how that worked in Detroit. We'll get to the rest of your rotation in a second, Brad. But today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook. Football season is here, and FanDuel is giving you the chance to win all season long, because right now, when you bet on a Super Bowl winner, you get bonus bets every time they win in the regular season. You just pick any team to win the Super Bowl, and you'll get bonus bets for every victory. Now, Brad, I can see that you're wearing a Michigan t-shirt here. Does that mean that you would put a bet on the Detroit Lions, or would you be looking for the Atlanta Falcons? Which one would you be going for? Who are you supporting?
I am a Falcons fan, but also I am a Falcons fan, so I'm broken inside. So I was leaning under on the Falcons. But there you go.
So don't put a bet on the Falcons for a Super Bowl win. You're not going to get your bonus bets up. Pick a team who's going to win a lot of regular season games. Bring those bonus bets in, and then use them on Falcons games for spreads and money lines and over-unders and player props and whatever it is that you can find there. So visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and start earning bonus bets with America's #1 sportsbook. That's FanDuel.com/lockedon. Don't forget to gamble responsibly. The rest of your rotation, we've talked about a couple of these guys already. Jalen Johnson, Onyeka Okongwu, AJ Griffin, and Bogdanovic. I do think that this is what they will go with as a 9-man group, because your 10th man is Wes Matthews or Garrison Matthews or Kobe Buffkin. Like, it's not great or reliable options. These guys are going to miss some time during the season, obviously, and some other guys step in, but I do agree that they will go in this direction. But as for Bogdanovic, who did start slowly with the knee surgery, but he did start to ramp things up towards the end of last season, put together some better performances. I think he shot the ball pretty amazingly, 46% from 3 over his final 25 games. But he's 31 now, Brad, and we talk about what happened when Snyder arrived. We saw his minutes drop as well. He was playing under 26 a night. Is that more what you see in line with his role here as we move forward? Or do you think he gets back to that 29 that he was playing a couple of years ago?
I think that they're going to look to manage him a little bit. I think Snyder's a little bit more modern than Nate McMillan is the way that I'll put it in a nice way. Nate does not really care about managing guys. He was a win every night kind of guy. And Bogdanovic is someone, I think he's really the only guy, maybe Capela as well, but he's really the only guy that they really need to actively manage his minutes because of the knee, because just his age and all the miles on him. But I always say this, I probably said on your show last year, the Hawks have always been their best when Bogdanovic has been healthy and right. He has been an X factor for them. Offensively, does stuff that nobody else on the team does. And that's they're going to need to use him wisely, but I think they're going to try to get, 60 games out of him, something like that, not be trying to get, 82 out of him necessarily. And also that goes for minutes as well. But I think that he is still going to close some games for them. He's that kind of guy for them where I would not be surprised if you see him in crunch time out there. But I think overall minutes wise, yeah, somewhere in the neighborhood of last year, 26, 27 is kind of what I would bank on for right now, at least barring injury.
The team, back to your starting group here, the team did sign Dejounte Murray to an extension. And I'll put it to you this way, Brad, after giving up all they did to get Dejounte Murray, the fact that he signed an extension at that price would suggest to me that the trade did not go particularly well.
It's really interesting because, Hawks fans rightly, and I think I agree with this. Like, I think it's a good contract. I think that's a deal
agree. I agree with that.
That the Hawks should have offered him. But it also kind of what you're alluding to there is like, if things had gone the way that they hoped, he wouldn't have signed it. So it's this really interesting middle ground where you're happy that he signed it, but also it kind of tells you that it didn't go well. And I think that's 100% right. I mean, they're hoping for more from him in general. He wasn't terrible, but the fit wasn't what they wanted. I think they're betting a lot across the board, but especially with Trae and Dejounte on Quin Snyder and some innovation and a different voice. Versus, I do think Nate McMillan, again, not trying to pick on Nate, but was probably the worst case scenario coach for Trae Young and Dejounte Murray. I think Snyder is much more open to new things and to maximize those guys. I think they're hoping that he maximizes Murray in particular because they need more from him for sure.
Yeah, look, I think at this time last season, we came on and talked about, I'm not sure how this fit is going to go. Dejounte really stuffed the stat sheet being the number one guy in San Antonio. And then when you get a choice of things like who you want running the pick and roll, who you want taking the shots, who you want setting up your teammates, it's not Dejounte Murray, it's Trae Young. So how does he work off the ball? And we saw his rebound rate cut in half. His assist rate dropped significantly. His steal rate fell away. He didn't become this knockdown, spot-up shooter. It just didn't make tons of sense. And back to that, like, part of the issue was, if it works, you're never going to be able to sign to extension. And then he leaves and you gave all this stuff. Well, it didn't work. He signed the extension and now, like, you've got all these draft picks coming. But, again, the Snyder factor's there. We don't know what that is going to mean. Let's look at the young players on this team. There are 5 guys who are currently under the age of 23. Jalen Johnson, 21. Okongwu, 22. AJ Griffin has just turned 20. Kobe Buffkin is about to turn 20, but he's currently 19. And Muhammad Gay is 20. Let's talk about Buffkin, because if got Trae Young, you've got Dejounte Murray. I think Buffkin was fine to pick in that zone. I probably would have even gone with him a little bit early. But in terms of a path to a role on this team with Bogdanovic there as well, like, where is it? Like, what do they see there with him? Because it's not like Trae and Dejounte are super old and we go, in a couple of years they'll be gone. You can say that with Bogdanovic, but what are they viewing here with Buffkin? Where do they see him fitting? Could he play next to those guys? Is he just a backup? Are they expecting one of those two to maybe go at some point? Like, what's the idea behind that?
I think in the end, it was a best available player pick, which I think most teams should do more, honestly.
Okay.
It's sometimes hard to sell that to your fans. And I've had a hard time explaining to some Hawks fans this summer, like, the theory, like, of what you're asking, because of what you just said. Like, okay, this guy is a 6'5", 6'6" guard. He can't start for you as long as you have Trae and Dejounte. Like, you're not going to start with 3 guys. I don't really care about starting the way that a lot of people do, but as far as, like, it does matter on some level for money and fantasy and minutes and all those things. And I think the pitch with Buffkin is that he can play both guard spots. They intentionally, I think, knowing that he wouldn't probably take to it perfectly in summer league, put him at the point exclusively. He played point guard the whole time. They knew it wouldn't go incredibly well, but they did it for development reasons, because he's more of a 2 right now, but they're hoping that long-term, 2 years from now, probably something like that, he can be kind of a versatile guy who can defend ones and run the point and play off the ball. And I think he could fit well with either Trae or Dejounte, probably not both just because of the lack of size, maybe in certain lineups potentially, but that's the pitch for him, is like, he's really good at a lot of different things. He's not elite at anything in particular, but I think that they're seeing versatility and just generally speaking, drafted the guy that they think was going to be the best player for them, which I generally think teams should do more. But as a rookie, it's hard to see him getting on the floor very much, just because even if, let's say, Trae or Dejounte roll an ankle, they probably go to Patty Mills, because Patty Mills is probably better right now to just eat minutes than Kobe Buffkin. This is a team that's trying to win. So
I love Patty Mills. He was also pretty bad last season. So
yeah, I'm not saying that's great. I'm just saying he's a veteran, or maybe you go more of Bogdanovic. You may even go more of Griffin, maybe even Wes Matthews. You just go a little bit bigger. And Wes Matthews, same thing, older stopgap guy. But I think that it would take a lot for them to kind of just hand the keys to Buffkin 20 minutes a night.
2 things with Buffkin here is that I agree with you about going best player available, and I had Buffkin ranked higher than this. I would have considered, for them, even like a Leonard Miller in that range, but that doesn't matter. But I think part of the best player available argument it's harder on this team because we just talked about Onyeka Okongwu sitting on the bench behind Clint Capela for 3 years, who I thought was clearly the best player available at pick number 6 when they took him in that draft. But he's sitting there as a backup big playing 20 minutes a night for 3 years, and people go, look, what's the point? Like, we've got these other guys in front of him. But the other thing is with Bufkin is Bogdanovic is 31, right? Yep. In 2 years' time, Bufkin's 21, turning 22. Bogdanovic is 33. And you can see how the third guard behind Trae and Dejounte plays 30 minutes a night because we've literally seen Bogdanovic do it. And Kobe can do that, step into a lineup, play a Jordan Clarkson role at times. Lou Williams has done it for this team in the past. Jordan Crawford's done it in the... not Jordan Crawford. Jamal Crawford has done it in the past. And it is very possible to play 30 minutes as a reserve guard who plays sometimes in 3-guard lineups. Dennis Schroeder, Chris Paul, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander did it in in OKC a few years ago. Like, it is possible, but I guess looking at that foresight there at the moment, you see, well, where is he? But Bogdanovic is going to drop, he's going to rise, and that change is probably going to happen in a couple of years' time. Brad, what on earth is all the Trae Young noise? What is all of this talk? Why does everyone hate him? Why is he not on the World Cup team? Why is there so much talk about him? He's still really, really good, and I think that he is horribly underrated. Yes, this coach killer tag is out there, but people will look at this Dejounte Murray extension and go, well, that just means they're trading Trae. Like, what is this? Why is he rubbed so many people the wrong way, and why is it always looked at in this lens?
It is honestly fascinating because when they drafted Trae, I'll go back that far and I won't do the long version, but like I am kind of predisposed to not loving small, no defense guards. Like, he's not the kind of guy that I usually love. And if I told you 3 or 4 years ago he was going to do all of what he's done and average what he's averaged and produce the way he's produced and be like you said, like pretty violently underrated, I would have been shocked, because usually this archetype gets overrated if anything. Like, the numbers tell the story, and he's a great fantasy player, and like 27-9 or something like that for 3 or 4 seasons. And it's very weird. And I think maybe it had to do with them kind of arriving a little bit early with the conference finals run, and he kind of became a villain, and I think he kind of embraced it a little bit, but maybe it has to do with just the fact that the Hawks have underachieved the last 2 years, and he gets quote unquote blamed for that. He wasn't perfect the last 2 years. Like, he had that terrible series against Miami 2 years ago where he was really, really bad, and I probably should have gotten more flack, honestly, for that series. But it's one of those things where I don't quite know. Maybe he's just been always polarizing, even in college. I mean, I know you're not tracking college all the way, but like, he was a polarizing guy in college. People either loved him or hated him, and maybe that's just going to be how it always is. But I am surprised that it's gone so far the other direction now, where I'm seeing him listed below guys that I cannot believe he's listed below. Like, I think he certainly has his flaws. You can argue, and I have, that he's not the easiest guy to build a contender around, but like, he's still really good, especially on offense. Like, is he a top 5, 7, 8 offensive player in the league? He's an excellent offensive player, and he's proven it too, but it's all weird to me.
I'd make the argument that I don't think it is that hard to build around. Yes, he defends poorly, but he also plays the position where defense matters the least. It doesn't matter that much.
That is true.
You can fit around it. He's an elite passer. He's one of the best passers in the entire NBA. And all he has to do, Brad, really, to elevate things is just become a better three-point shooter. And it sounds crazy, but he hasn't been a good three-point shooter. He takes them. He takes a lot. He opens the defense, but he's had 1 year of being a league average or above league average three-point shooter. He was at 33% last season. If he's a 30, and Devin Booker actually went through this same thing. Different players, obviously, but Devin Booker was like, man, look at him. He's this great three-point shooter, and he didn't shoot good three-point percentages for about 4 years. And then he did. And then everything sort of came together, and now Devin Booker is universally loved as this player. Well, no, maybe not universally, but I just think that Trae Young gets fantasy circles as well, massively underrated. What he does is really hard to replicate, and while I don't love the Dejounte Murray pairing next to him, I think, I don't know, there are guys you can fit around him that do make quite a bit of sense, and it shouldn't be particularly difficult to do it, but there's been some issues, I think, with some of the building of the roster. Now, this is an interesting question. I'm not really sure. I wasn't even going to do it necessarily, but what's going on with AJ Griffin? There is a lot happening with his social media accounts. There is just a bunch of likes and retweets of things that, honestly, there are going to be people in the locker room, I'm guessing, that I'd be like, bro, what's going on here? Is there? Have you heard any? Like, obviously, you've seen the stuff with AJ Griffin. If you haven't, just go check out his Twitter feed. There's a lot of weird stuff going on. Not even weird stuff. It's just stuff like, okay, there is going to be some sort of friction, I believe, at some point with some of these things in a locker room. Have you heard anything along those lines? Do you think that I'm completely overblowing this? But it is stuff that I would say goes very much against the ethos of 95% of NBA players, and that's chemistry is a thing that is impossible to quantify, but when you see bad chemistry, it does become apparent. Is there any worry about what is currently being happening at the moment with these social media accounts?
The short answer is I don't know. I mean, only because it's August. You know what I mean? Like,
Sure.
I think last year, by all accounts and everything I heard, like everybody liked AJ. Like he was a popular guy in the locker room, and I don't know if that's going to change based on this summer. And also, he's been in trade rumors, which I don't know what that. I don't know what kind of impact that can have. Like young guys can kind of respond in different directions to trade rumors. AJ's not afraid to say what he thinks, which could be, that's what it is. But I'm intrigued to see how it's handled internally, because this Hawks locker room has not always been the best. Although I think last year the vibes were a little bit better once the season got. I mean, they didn't have a great season, but there wasn't quite as much strife behind the scenes that I could glean. But I think AJ was pretty well beloved in the locker room a year ago, and I will be interested to see if that changes. But it is August, and like guys are not around, so I haven't heard anything yet. But something I'll be keeping an eye on in October when things start up, because I think everybody will be talking about that as they have been the last couple of days.
I thought AJ Griffin had an unbelievably good rookie season. I think he's going to turn. Look, if I don't even remember where I did it, but doing a redraft to me, he shouldn't have gone at 16 anyway last season. I think he's probably a top 10 player from that class. I think he's got the ability to be a top 4 or 5 player from that draft class. Honestly, he's still super young. He shot the ball unbelievably well as a rookie. I think he's got defensive upside, playmaking upside. I think he's going to be a really, really good player. And I just hope that there's no off court or locker room distractions that lead to stuff that gets into weird positions with him, because I still really believe in him as a player and a prospect. And honestly, I think that out of that Bay, Jalen Johnson, AJ Griffin triumvirate, to me, Griffin's by far the clear best prospect out of that group. And that's why I said, put Hunter at the 4, start Griffin. Let's see what we got here. Let's see how this all works. But yeah, you just hope that things can be okay, and there is maybe I'm completely overreacting because it is August and nothing's going on, but it is a little eye opening, I guess. What does Quin Snyder bring? We've talked already about Nate McMillan's conservative nature with his offensive stylings, and Quin is a guy that in the past is like, all right, let's shoot 3 guys, let's spread it out, let's do stuff with more modernity. Did you see that change in those 20-odd games last season?
Yes. I think I was trying to warn people that it wasn't going to flip the switch overnight, because it was a largely unprecedented situation. Yeah. Like, you don't usually see a team that's trying to win change a coach from an outside coach in the middle of the season. That just doesn't happen. I was doing research. I couldn't find another instance of this ever at this point. So it was really strange. And Quin was really, I thought, skilled in praising Nate and praising the assistants, and not just blowing it up publicly. But they ran some different stuff, and as you saw, as the season went along, especially in the playoffs, it was starting to look more like Quin ball. They were playing faster. They took a lot more threes. And he was talking about that. I'm sure you noticed that a lot. He was talking about threes constantly in the media. He wants to take more threes. Defensively, they were really bad, but they were really bad before that too. But they were really good on offense when he got there. And I think that's, I think with Trae Young, as we talked about a second ago, if you have Trae Young and enough shooting around him, you should be a top 5 offense. We've kind of seen that. And I think with Quin, I have more faith that they're going to be able to do that now. But this is the first time he'll come in with a full training camp, full offseason, and his own staff, and have a lot more of the imprint. And look, they were top. I think they were number 3 or 4 in the league in offense after the All-Star break with him in there. And that's with a lot of old stuff still hanging on. With all of his new stuff, I think that you could argue whether they were banking on him too much, because I think they're almost saying, Quin, make a miracle for us, because they kind of made the roster, if anything, worse, and they're expecting a lot more results. But I think that it's realistic, and I believe this, that they'll win a handful more games just on coaching this year. I believe that. And it's a players league, but I think just scheme wise and maximizing guys, barring injuries and all that stuff, I think he is a real upgrade there, and that will definitely help them.
I agree with that. I agree that he is a huge upgrade in the coaching department. We're going to talk about our win-loss totals later on, and I'll talk about my rationale behind it, but I do agree that he's a huge upgrade there. Who's a breakout candidate on this team? I think that they are. There's quite a few guys here, I think. Who would you go with as the one guy?
Yeah, I mean, I am tempted to say AJ Griffin. I think the obvious answer would be Okongwu if Capela gets moved. because Okongwu, I firmly believe in Okongwu. I think Okongwu might be a top 10 center in the league in a couple of years. Like, I think he's going to be really good. There's just kind of a ceiling there with Capela there. So if you take him away and assume Capela's going to be there, I'll probably lean to Griffin. But like you said, you got Griffin, you got Johnson, and Okongwu are all pretty natural breakout candidates, and you couldn't go wrong with either one.
Yeah, look, there's a few of them. They're like Jalen Johnson, Okongwu, Griffin. They're all young. They're all got perhaps larger opportunities coming. Somebody is going to have a better season than maybe mainstream media thinks. And I'm really excited to see where they go. That's why I just think there's some weird stuff that goes on in terms of the reporting on the Hawks, because there is some interesting things that can go on. But what about the other side? What about the negative side of things, Brad? What about a regression candidate?
Yeah, so I knew this question was coming. It's so funny because if you look at it, nobody had a great season last year to regress from.
True.
Does that make sense? Like, it's kind of hilarious. I was looking at this, like trying to find somebody. I mean, the answer might be Saddiq Bey's offense. It's like he was only there for 25, 30 games, but he shot like 40% from three. I'm not sure he's actually that level of shooter. You know, Bogey had a great shooting season, but like no one else played above their heads. I mean, it's an odd situation to kind of, I mean, maybe you could say Griffin's not going to do like the linear progression off of his awesome numbers from last year in a way that you might have, but like, it's really hard to find a guy who's going to regress because everyone either achieve what they were supposed to or below that. So it's like, am I missing something here? I can't find anybody that's like a natural fall off guy.
No, I don't
maybe
think
Capela.
I don't think Dejounte. Dejounte Murray can't really get significantly worse. DeAndre Hunter,
No.
If DeAndre Hunter gets worse, well, he's out of the league. Like, he's not that bad, but like he's at a baseline bad level. Like he's been better than this. Like, I don't think he's getting worse. Saddiq Bey's probably it. And then in general, I just default to the age. Like, Bogdanovic is 31. Like, at some point with multiple knee surgeries under your belt, something just might fall away and you just might lose half a step and maybe the shot doesn't go in or you don't get to the line as often. And that's just the same with Capela. Like,
Capela too. I was going to say he's probably the one just because, you know, if and when he loses another step, he might just be a backup center. And the problem is he's making starting center money, but as of now, he's still been really good when he's played. So
I guess the thing with Capela is you look at his block rate, it's gone from 3.3 per 100 2 years ago to 2.2 and then 2.1. And that's where you go, okay, now we're seeing it tail off a little bit. The rebound rate from 22.9 to 20.7 to 19.4. Like, is he just not in position as quick?
He's not the same. He's not the same athlete. I'll tell you that. I mean, I think they all know that. He's gotten by. I mean, he's really good positioning wise. It's not going down the rabbit hole too much, but I think that if you watch him every night, he's not the same guy athletically that he was 2 years ago, which is expected. But if that happens again, then that's maybe the little bit of a scare because Bogdanovic is so skilled that as long as he's healthy, like he has stuff that he can do. Like, his shooting is going to be valuable, but Capela, he's probably the one now that we're talking through this, just because of the fact that if he has another step or two down below where he is, he starts to get into some trouble.
The general age, now it's not like that they get bad, but the NBA peak player is about 29, right? So it's 28.8 or 29, whatever it is. And you're going up and up and up and you hit that top and you're there. And the good players can keep it relatively steady for 3 years, but it's like steady and it's sort of heading down. But if you're sub-elite, which is what I would say Clint Capela is, he's very good, all right? But he's not elite. That can start to fall pretty quickly at that age. And it's very hard at that age. You'll see the outliers. Brook Lopez had one of his best seasons at age 35 last season. That's not the likely scenario of these guys. But once you hit that 29, it does start to taper. And it's like, how fast do we drop off? Do we keep it marginally like on a flat level, or do we start to really crater? Like, shout out to Andre Drummond, who just turned 30. Like, his shit was packed up 2 years ago. There's so many of these guys who are at this age and it just goes. And I'm not saying it's going to happen for Capela, but that's where I'm looking. That's the red alert stuff. Who's the most likely player to be traded on this team?
I think it's probably Capela, only because of the obvious behind him. And if the Hawks are not, look, he could be traded between now and camp. I wouldn't say it's going to happen, but that's plausible to me. And if, let's say the Hawks are 500 in February, and I'm not saying it's going to happen, but it could. Why wouldn't they look to go ahead and just finally pull the ripcord? Because look, I've been saying it for 3 years. I know you have too. Like, they had to make a decision at some, and they just have not. They've never made one. And every step of the way, I get why they haven't done it, because Capela's made it hard on them. But they're going to have to make a choice. And at the end of this coming season, Okongwu will be a free agent, and you can't give him what he's going to get on the market with Capela on the roster. So I think he's the natural guy. And if you want another one, it'd probably be Hunter, because Hunter's been like kind of sneaky available all summer, and he wasn't a Quin Snyder guy. So I'm not sure what they feel about Hunter right now. Like, this is a totally new front office that didn't invest in him, but I think it still has to be Capela just because of Okongwu.
The thing with the Capela trades, we have been talking about it for a while, but like there is no better time for this because Okongwu's a good player. I think he's going to be a very good player. Capela's a good player, but they're different. Like they are very different, and making that switch between the two, I think, requires defensive scheme adjustments. Right? If you're going to be playing full time as Okongwu as your starter, like he's not 6'11" and a pure rim protecting big the way that Capela is. Like he can block shots, but they're different, right? So you need to start to things need to be adjust around that, and if you're going to make that pivot, like it's got to be soon. And I guess that leads us into just quickly, like what do you think of the Siakam discussions? Like Siakam's also 30, like. Yes, there's a glaring hole at power forward. Is it worth, like if that package that was there, whatever it was, Hunter and Griffin with some draft compensation for Siakam, is that enough to push this team into top 4, top 2 seed territory?
Yeah, I think top 4, yes. Top 2 is the question. And not to give you all the context, but the big thing with Siakam is the 1 year of control and the fact that he and his agent are telling anybody who will listen that they don't want to stay anywhere, including Atlanta. So it's really hard to pay top dollar for a guy who's actively telling you, I don't want to sign with you.
Yep.
And he might sign. I mean, that's the thing. There's this game of chicken, and it's kind of like with Murray, but with Murray, they had 2 years left. And with Siakam, it's 1 year. And you're paying a lot for that. So I think on the court, he would obviously help them. I don't love the Murray and Young and Siakam fit. I was actually more interested in Siakam when Murray was going to potentially be the trade, Murray for Siakam. And then when Murray signed, that was off the table. They couldn't do that anymore. But I think Trae and Siakam would be a lot of fun. I don't know if I love Trae, Murray, Siakam, and a center. Because the thing is, you're looking at some pretty questionable shooting because Murray's not a non-shooter. Siakam's not a non-shooter. They're not great shooters. And then you throw in a center. Even if it's a Okongwu, he's not a shooter yet. He might be a shooter long-term, but not quite there yet. So, I don't know. He makes them better. But I think that to do that deal with 1 year left, again, given the intel, you kind of have to feel like the Hawks are going to be a title contender this year. And I don't think that would be what I would believe. I'm not saying it's impossible, but you need to feel internally like, hey, we can win 55 and make a run at the finals. And if you feel that way, then it's easier to justify. But if you don't, it's like, hey, he'll make us better. It's a lot to give up for 1 year.
I agree. And have a look at Toronto's record last season. It's not like that they were winning 55 games with Siakam as their best guy. Yeah, Trae Young's better than Fred VanVleet, but yeah, that's not how all this works. So I tend to agree with you in that regard. Let's have a look at the win totals now. They were 41-41 last season, 19th best net rating, a positive of plus 0.1. FanDuel's got them at 41.5, so basically the same as last year. Brad, you've gone 46-36. I've gone 42-40. This is what I was referring to earlier on, saying, yeah, Quin Snyder, I think, does give them more wins than last season. Right? I agree with that he is a 3-4 win upgrade, whatever it is. But back to the very start of the show when we looked at the players in, players out, it's a talent drop, right? They got worse. Their team is worse, and you are hoping that you see internal development from players, which is distinctly possible, but the roster's worse. So that's why I've only given them that extra one game. That's a Snyder bump, but it's also, well, you lost Collins and you got nothing. So that reduces the overall production there. But I don't have any concerns with him being at 46. That's distinctly possible. Trae hits 39% of his threes, and we're rolling. That's where you're at. So that's sort of my reasoning for only going that one game over, even though Snyder is a clear upgrade.
Yeah, I don't blame you. And I almost said 45. In fact, you were the first person that's asked me for a win total projection. So I was like, I'm just going to choose one. So this is not my final probably, but I think your reasoning is sound. I think that post deadline, when this is not important stuff, but they improved their depth at the deadline last year. I think not only adding Bay, who I don't love either, but he's a quality rotation player. Adding guys who are kind of boring, like Bruno Fernando and Garrison Matthews. Those were upgrades on what they had before. It was when they had anybody hurt last year, it was ugly. Their depth, 10 through 15, was really, really rough last season. So I think a full season of that, a full season of Snyder. And like I said before, I don't think anybody had a capital G good year on this roster last year. And that probably isn't going to happen again. Maybe it will. I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong. But I think that and Snyder and everything else, if they had Collins, I would feel better about it for sure because I'm very high on Collins. But yeah, I think 45, 46, and I'm not known of being an optimist,
no,
Josh.
I'm
known for being pretty pessimistic at times. But I think part of it's I think that they were better than their record last year. And that's right. And they were terrible in close games and all that stuff. It's a very nuanced in the weeds thought of them being that much better, but I think you maybe are probably closer to right than I am. But I just I'm seeing so many things that didn't go right last year. Other than injuries, the only thing that they had last year is that they weren't banged up. That's important to note. I'm sure you noticed that too. Like, there's this thought they were hurt. Like, no, they really weren't. Like, they just didn't play that well.
Yeah, no.
And I think that maybe I'm falling under the Hawks trap of like banking on Snyder, but I'm seeing some improvement.
If I was to run through in my head and project out everything 10,000 times for this team, I think my number of 42 is like a median sort of outcome of where they are. But I also think that it's very hard for me to see them being worse than that. I just think that everything would take me back to that level. But if you said, are they going to win 4 more and be 46 or win 4 fewer and be 38? Well, I'd easily go 46. I think the potential of them to be that is way higher than for them to be a 38 win team and be below 500. So while I think 42 is the most likely, hence the median discussion, that's probably what's going to happen the majority of the time in my mind. They are way more likely to go over that than they are to go under that. It's not a pure average number. I think that the skewedness would tend towards pushing things to the bigger number. And now, we've done all that boring stuff. Let's play a game. Brad, we're going to play the Hawks grid. Now, the last one of these shows I did was with the Bulls, and Hayes was on, and he had never seen a grid game. And I went, man, I appreciate your ability to stay off social media for the last 3 months. Well done. Congratulations. He'd never seen it. He had no idea. I assume that you have seen this.
I have seen it. I've not played, but I've seen them. So I'm at least familiar. I can't say that I'm...
The general process here is we are looking for someone who has played for both teams. Hawks and Mavericks. Hawks and Grizzlies. Hawks and Cavs. Hawks and Thunder. Hawks and Suns. And the last one is someone who averaged 5 assists per game while they were a member of the Atlanta Hawks in one single season. Now, what we are trying to do is get players who have played smaller amount of games. So if they've played for Atlanta and Dallas and they played 400 games for Atlanta and 3 games for Dallas, we're going to count the 3. So we're going to choose the smallest of those 2 numbers and then rank those on a scale of 0 to 100. And no, you can't claim Luka Doncic as an Atlanta Hawks player, even though there is photographic evidence of him wearing a hat. Brad, and I didn't choose that Mavericks one just to piss you off. So where do you want to start here? So we're trying to get the players with the lowest games played for either of the team and rank it that way. And that's going to enable you to try and beat your fellow Locked On hosts. I'm
going to lose for sure. Okay. So what I have to do here is go Hawks Mavs first, right? Okay. My first inclination was to say Vince Carter.
Hawks Mavs Vince Carter. Even though he is a popular name, it's not a particularly high score because he didn't play huge amounts of games for either teams. He played 136 for Atlanta, 223 for Dallas. That gives you a score of 33.58. Remember, it's 100 to 0 scale, 100 being the worst score you could get because that's the highest number. The highest number between these two teams was Jason Terry. There you go.
Oh, okay. Well, I buy that.
He played 619 games for Dallas and 403 for Atlanta. Let's find some funny names in this. Jeremy Evans, do you remember his 1 game for Atlanta? He would have been a good guess.
I do remember that now that you say it, of course, which is important. But
what about the 5 games that Chandler Parsons played for Atlanta?
Oh, how did I not say Chandler Parsons?
You could have also gone with the 5 games that Kevin Willis played for Dallas, which I had no idea happened, but apparently it did. Hawks legend played 753 games for Atlanta and 5 games for Dallas. All right, which one do you want to go for next?
Let's go Thunder.
Thunder, okay.
Oh, man. I'm trying to think of a guy. Mike Muscala is a terrible answer. That's not what I'm going to do. Thunder players. I'll just say Mike Muscala. That's not a good answer. But.
Mike Muscala is a bang average answer. It gives you a 54.4. He did play. I didn't realize he'd played quite as much for Atlanta, but then I remember he started off.
He did, in
Atlanta. So Mike Muscala played 168 for OKC and 243 for Atlanta, but you could have gone for the guy who's currently on the roster, Vic Krejci, who played 29 games for Atlanta. He would have given you a 9. The highest score is Lenny Wilkins, because it counts Seattle's history as well. But he played 308 games for the Seattle franchise. Here's a funny name in here we could look at. Oh, coaching legend Fred Vinson played for both franchises. You could have chosen him. I didn't know that one. And who else do we know? Oh, how about this guy? You know this guy, Daniel Hamilton.
Oh, yeah.
He played 6 games for the Thunder and 19 for the Hawks. All right, which one are we doing next?
I actually have a decent one, I think, for Memphis.
Okay, let's go. Here we go.
I think I'm remembering. Austin Day.
Wow, I used to really believe in Austin Day. I used to think
Me too. That's why I'm thinking of him right now, because I was a fan as well.
Didn't work out. I do not remember him in Atlanta at all. That is an absolutely.
He was there.
That's a cracking guess. 2.68 for that one.
Right.
Austin Day played 8 games for Atlanta, 31 for Memphis. You could have also gone with Chandler Parsons for that one as well.
Yeah, when he said it, I figured he played too much for Memphis. I was like, I guess not.
But no, because you use the lowest number, so the 5 for Atlanta counts for Chandler Parsons there.
Okay.
I tell you what would have been an unbelievable one. Tyler Zeller played 2 games for Atlanta and 4 for Memphis. That's one of the.
Oh, he was on the COVID Hawks. That was a dark time for us all.
The COVID answers on these give you some amazing ones that you just completely do not remember at all, and that was one of them. All right, we've got Suns, we've got Cavs, and we've got 5 assists per game in a season.
I don't know. He never played. I can't use Anton Jamison for the Cavs. He's never played for the Hawks. He was on the team. He just didn't play.
Yes, you can't do that. Correct.
That was my weird answer. Hawks, Cavs. I'm going to come back to that. Hawks, Cavs, and Hawks and 5 assists a game.
Hawks and 5 assists a game. Yeah. And it's like, and the way we scale this one is the fewest amount of games the player has played for the Hawks in their career gives you the best score, and they have to have averaged 5 assists per game in a season.
5 assists per game.
And they don't have to have played 80 games in a season. They don't have to have been with the team the whole year. They just have to have averaged 5 in a season while they were on the Hawks in a season.
I don't know if he qualifies. I think he might. Give me Bob Sura for assists per game.
Holy shit, Brad Rowland. That is the best score you could possibly get.
Does he qualify?
Bob Sura qualifies. That is a 0 for that one because he averaged 5 assists per game. He played 27 games only for the Hawks. That is an unbelievable one. The other ones you could have gone for that would have given you good scores. Dejounte Murray's only played 74 games in his Hawks career. And Tony Kukoc was a good answer there as well, who only played 76 games in his Hawks career. So we've got Cavs, we've got Suns.
Another guy who didn't play. I'm thinking of guys who came to the Hawks and never played. Like I almost said Jock Landale. Like that doesn't count.
Oh, that's right.
He came to the Hawks for 5 seconds.
At least they prioritized Frank Kaminsky over him.
Man, that's not a good situation. While I vamp, I'm going to think about. You probably don't know this. Bob Sura once had like 3 straight triple doubles with the Hawks. It was an incredible time.
I did not know that.
At the end, it was deeply April basketball. Man, I can't think of anybody. I'm like, this is a lot of pressure, Josh. I'm not. Maybe I'll be better at this game if I wasn't on camera. Man, I'm bad at this.
I'm just looking through. Okay, do you want a hint for one of these ones? I'll give you.
Yeah. Yes, I guess I do.
Let's go to Phoenix. Wow, I didn't know this one. I don't think you'd know that one either. But there's a guy that was on the Hawks last season that would qualify for this. Actually, there's 2 guys who played for the Hawks last season who would qualify for this.
Last season who qualify for the Suns. Who's on? What am I missing?
Oh, there's quite a few interesting names here.
It wasn't Justin Holiday. Aaron Holiday. Aaron
Holiday is correct. And he's not the only player who was on the Hawks last season who qualified because Frank Kaminsky, the aforementioned Frank Kaminsky, played for both of those teams. But Aaron Holiday did play for both. That's not a bad score there for Aaron. Aaron gives you a 7.66. Good score there for him.
I have a Cavs one. It may not be the best answer, but at least I thought of someone.
All right, let's go. Who we got here for the Cavs?
Ira Newble.
What the hell is that? What's an Ira Newble? Let's have a look. Ira. Wow. Okay, that is
like early 2000s, late 90s. Ira Newble.
That is an answer. There you go. It's surprisingly a high score, 54.55 for Ira,
really?
because he played 115 games for Atlanta. He played 230.
Oh, he was longer with Cleveland. That's right.
Now, if you wanted a really cracking one here, Eddie Tavares played 1 game for the Cavs. Not sure when that happened.
I think about Eddie. I think about Eddie often. I did not think about him playing for the Cavs.
And what about Justin Anderson played 3 games for the Cavs? That might have been an interesting one there for
you. Hawks fans will make fun of me if they're listening to this because I am like the world's largest Justin Anderson fan. So me not knowing that it's bad.
I can't believe that Justin Anderson didn't work out. I was convinced that he was going to be good.
I still believe right now. He's like 30. I'm still in.
defensive, strong wing who sometimes can shoot. Oh, man. And it just never happened. And I was so annoyed. Every team, or maybe in Philly, maybe in Dallas, maybe it happens in Atlanta, but never. And I did give it up finally. But yeah, it frustrates me that he never made it.
I'm still here. Look, if nothing else, I got Bob Sura, and that is enough to validate my participation in the game. So
fantastic, Brad. Tell us what's going on over at Locked On Hawks at the moment.
Josh, it's the dead zone. It's August. We're talking about anything that could possibly be talked about. Expansion draft, all kinds of things. Lots of Siakam rumors. It's the dead zone. We're still doing shows though, so check out Locked On Hawks. It's the best place to find your Hawks coverage. Like Josh alluded to, there aren't that many places that do a lot of Hawks coverage. It's kind of a dead zone for stuff, but I'm always here. So follow the show.
Brad is always there. Go check out Locked On Hawks. And Brad, thank you once again for about the 6th or 7th year in a row for coming on and talking about the Hawks with me.
Happy to do it.
And that'll do it for me today. Don't forget, follow this podcast, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Stitcher, Spotify, and on the Odyssey app and on YouTube. Thumb it up and leave your comments down below. Guys, we are done here. Thank you so much for listening, everyone. See ya.